You feel it, but you can't name it. That tightness in your chest, that subtle shift in your breathing, that quiet question inside your mind that won't go away. Someone looks at you, speaks gently, maybe even kindly, but something inside you flinches. Not from what was said, but from what was hidden between the words. You know that feeling. It's not fear exactly. It's not anger either. It's something older, something deeper, a kind of silent rage. It's the moment. Your soul whispers something's off, but your mouth stays shut to keep the peace. How many times have you swallowed that whisper? How often have you told yourself, maybe I'm overreacting? How many lies have you let past quietly, not because you believe them, but because questioning them make you feel like the crazy one? What if I told you not all questions are innocent? Some are designed like traps. They're carefully crafted not to find the truth, but to make you doubt yourself, to make you shrink inside your own skin, to confuse your clarity until their lie sounds more convincing than your intuition. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But manipulators know that too, and they use it. They build illusions so subtle that you question your own sight, your own voice, your own sanity. But here's the truth. When you silence your instincts just to avoid conflict, you're not keeping the peace. You're surrendering your center, because silence in the presence of manipulation isn't calm, it's captivity. The real battle is never in what they say. It's not even in the argument you didn't have. The real battle is in how your body tenses, how your chest tightens, how your soul begins to tremble, trying to protect you from something your mind can't yet name. And here's the spiritual paradox. What if the path to truth isn't loud, aggressive, or reactive? What if real clarity, the kind that sees through lies, exposes masks and disarms manipulation, is quiet but unshakable? This is not about fighting. This is not about calling anyone out. This is about returning to yourself, about awakening a silent strength that doesn't need to prove anything, because it already sees everything. That stay with me. Because in this journey, you won't just learn how to spot manipulation. You'll learn how to remain whole inside. That when the world tries to twist your truth, you'll be the one who doesn't flinch. Let's begin. Doesn't start with a scream. It starts with a question, gentle, innocent, almost loving. Why are you so reactive? It slips into the air like mist. No sharp edges, just enough to make you wonder. Is this me? That's how it begins, not with violence, but with confusion, not with accusation, but with concern, or what looks like concern. Because behind that question, there's another one they won't say out loud. Can I make you doubt what you just felt? And if you pause long enough, the answer is often yes. That moment, that single pause, is where the cut happens. The first cut, the silent one. It doesn't bleed, but it shifts you inside subtly, invisibly, and once it's done, you begin editing your instincts to keep things calm. You start mistaking discomfort for instability, as if something feeling wrong means you must be wrong. That's the trick, that's the theft. They don't attack your clarity, they rearrange it quietly, strategically. According to the Shakta Singer theory, our emotions are shaped not only by what we feel, but by the context we assign to those feelings. Manipulators know this. They don't challenge your emotions directly. They shift the context until your anger feels like overreaction, your suspicion feels like paranoia, and your intuition feels like guilt. But ask yourself, are you reacting or are you finally feeling? That question can break a spell. That question can save your voice. Because the truth is, what you feel isn't too much. It's what they're trying to avoid. And when you suppress that truth in yourself, it doesn't disappear, it goes into the shadow. Carl Jung warned us, what we repress doesn't die. It waits, and often what we hide from, becomes the very thing others use to control us. But this isn't about blame. This is about awareness that Marcus Aurelius wrote. If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change that strength. That's clarity, but what happens when your questions make someone defensive? Not because you're wrong, but because they rely on your silence. That's not your failure. That's their fear of exposure. That's a pause, yes. Reflect, yes. But never abandon your truth to protect their comfort. The first cut is silent, but once you see it, once you feel it, you are no longer the one being cut. You are the one holding the mirror. That it sounds so gentle, so reasonable. Trust me, but in your gut, it doesn't feel like a request. It feels like a warning. That's the twist. Real trust doesn't need to be demanded. It grows in the quiet soil of consistency and truth. But when someone insists on it, when they pressure you to trust them without offering clarity, they're not building connection. They're silencing resistance, because guilt is a silent leash. It pulls softly, then tighter until you're apologizing for something that never felt right in the first place. You question your questions. You swallow your instincts. And the worst part is it doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like your own doubt. That's the brilliance of emotional control. It doesn't break you. It bends you until you start bending yourself. Epictetus said only the educated are free. But manipulative minds use that against you. They turn your curiosity into betrayal. They shame your skepticism, and suddenly, the pursuit of truth feels like a moral failure. The mind wants to understand, but the conscience, that's where they aim. Because if they can make you feel guilty for not trusting them, they never have to earn that trust in the first place. And if they can paint your doubt as disloyalty, they've already won the argument without ever speaking the truth. But your nervous system knows. Your amygdala doesn't care about politeness. It doesn't care about tone. It senses threat, emotional, psychological, spiritual. That subtle tightness in your jaw, that shallow breath, that invisible tension in your shoulders. That's your body whispering, this is not safe. And when you ignore that voice long enough, it doesn't go silent, it goes deeper. And it starts to feel like your personality, but it's not. It's your body, remembering what your mind has been taught to dismiss. Real trust has no fear of being questioned. It doesn't collapse when you ask, is this true in fact? It welcomes the question because truth always does that. So next time someone looks at you and says, trust me, ask quietly, even just inside, are we standing on truth right now? Because if they need to ask for your trust out loud, maybe they've already lost the right to it in silence. That it happens in an instant. You ask a question gentle, grounded, maybe even hesitant. But suddenly the light shifts, the focus turns, and you're no longer seeking truth. You're defending your sanity. Are you accusing me? Just 5 words. But they carry centuries of emotional inversion. Because now, it's no longer about what was done or what was hidden. Now it's about you, your tone, your doubt, your damage. This is the mirror trick. A tactic has only shame itself. It's not about denying the truth outright. It's about reversing the energy so you become the problem. So instead of exploring your clarity, you're busy cleaning up the mess of someone else's deflection. You start wondering if you were too intense. If maybe you misread, if your questions are the real issue, and slowly, piece by piece, you abandon the very insight that brought you to the truth. In the first place, that's how control survives. By making the questioner feel dangerous. And in that reversal, something secret is lost. Your right to clarity. Your right to feel. Your right to not carry what was never yours. That psychology calls it the persecutor. Victim, rescuer, triangle, a toxic dance. Where roles are assigned without your consent. You came for truth, but you're cast as the aggressor. They become the wounded. And now you're not uncovering lies. You're defending your empathy. But the Stoics offered a different path. They didn't teach reaction. They taught stillness, not cold detachment, but clarity apatheia, a state of being where the waters of your soul remain calm, even when someone tries to stir the mud, because the truth is like a lake. When agitated, the dirt rises. But wait, breathe, and the water clears. So does the deception. When someone flips the mirror and points it at you, stay still, watch what's reflected. That not to judge, not to blame, but to remember if you were truly wrong. You wouldn't need to be silenced, you'd be understood. And if you're being made to feel like a villain just for seeking clarity, the issue was never your question. It was the fear that the answer would expose too much. Would I lie to you? It sounds soft, innocent, almost playful. But listen closely, because it isn't a question. It's a performance, and the stage is your doubt. This is the elegance of manipulation. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It uses warmth like a weapon. A smile can become a mask. Kindness can become camouflage. And the more sincere it seems, the more disoriented you feel. Because when deception is wrapped in sweetness, you stop looking for the blade. And yet it cuts not with anger. Not with chaos, but with charm. And that's what makes it so dangerous. You're not battling aggression. You're battling confusion. You start to feel cool, just for wondering if something's off. You feel guilty for doubting the story, even though the facts don't add up. And soon the search for clarity becomes a burden. You carry alone. That's the emotional scam. They don't need to prove innocence. They just need to make your suspicion feel like betrayal. And in that haze, many give up not because they believe the lie, but because the lie is easier to live with than the loneliness of confronting it. But there's another way, a quieter, deeper way, as Thich Nhat Hanh once said. The way out is not into paranoia, not into accusation, but into yourself. Into your breath, into the silent place that knows. Because the truth doesn't always announce itself, but the body keeps score, the nervous system listens. The heart remembers. False humility often wears the costume of innocence. It says, I'd never do that. With such sweetness you hesitate to ask. But what if you did? That's the question that matters. That's the moment that parts illusion from insight. Would you recognize it if they did lie? Because the truth never fears that question. Only deception does that. So, next time someone leans in, with soft eyes and softer words, ask that out loud, but inside yourself. Does this feel like clarity or like cover? Because velvet can feel like comfort, until you notice the sting underneath. Let's just move on, it sounds mature. Rational, even peaceful. But beneath those 4 words is a silent strategy. Not to resolve, but to escape. Not to bring clarity, but to bury it. Because exhaustion, not understanding, is often the true aim. They don't need to win the argument. They just need you too tired to keep questioning, too overwhelmed to keep looking, too emotionally worn down to keep caring. And once that happens, they don't need to convince you. They just wait for you to surrender. That this is not closure, this is emotional anesthesia. That it feels like relief, but it's really a shutdown, a kind of spiritual numbness that settles over your clarity. Like fog, you stop asking. Not because you found peace, but because you lost energy. And in that quiet, manipulation breathes easy. The danger is not in losing the fight. It's in giving up your right to know what really happened. To understand why it didn't feel right. To honor the signals your soul kept sending, even when your mind tried to explain them away. Marcus Aurelius said, if it's not true, don't say it. If it's not right, don't do it. But what happens when someone pushes you to pretend it never happened? Not because it's resolved, but because it's inconvenient. That's not strength, that's control, dressed as calm. And the body knows. The nervous system remembers every unfinished truth. Every moment when you nodded just to end the tension. Every time you smiled when your spirit wanted to speak. Done it stored in the tension in your neck. the pressure in your chest, the weight behind your eyes, because clarity isn't found in rushing past discomfort. It's found in staying long enough to see what's real. You don't need to move on quickly. You need to move on truthfully. And that moment doesn't come from someone else's timeline. It comes from your own inner yes quiet. Grounded and certain, I move on when I understand. Not before. That's not defiance. That's self-respect. And in a world that profits off your silence, honoring your truth is nothing short of rebellion. They'll say you're too much, too sensitive, too intense, too reactive. They'll say it with a smile, maybe even with concern. But what they really mean is you notice too much. You feel too deeply, and that makes me uncomfortable. And so they'll try to turn your gift into a flaw. But you are not broken. That ache in your chest, that sharp awareness in your gut, that sudden sense that something is off. It's not weakness, it's not fragility. It's perception, it's depth. It's the silent intelligence of the soul that refuses to be fooled in a world that rewards numbness. Awareness is radical. We've been taught that to feel deeply is to be unstable, that to notice subtle manipulation is to be dramatic. But that's a lie, told by those who benefit from your silence, because the truth is, your body knows tension is information. The nervous system doesn't lie, even when people do. That sudden tightness in your belly, that clenching in your jaw, that urge to pull back without knowing why, that is not dysfunction, that is a compass. Your pain is not proof of failure, it's evidence of insight. And yet culture will try to reframe it. We'll call it oversensitivity. We'll tell you to tone it down. But those same voices are often the ones who thrive in a world where no one sees clearly. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that sensitivity is not the enemy. It is the radar, it is the anchor. And when you honor it, when you stop editing your awareness to protect someone else's illusion, you return to your center. Feel your feet on the ground. Breathe into your gut, let your voice rise. Not from panic, but from truth. Speak not to prove. Speak because silence has cost you enough. Because the awakened are rarely celebrated. They are feared not because they are dangerous, but because they cannot be fooled. And in a world built out appearances, that kind of presence is power. There comes a moment when you stop explaining, not out of pride, not out of distance, but out of a quiet. Knowing that no explanation will protect your truth the way your silence can. It's not the silence of fear, it's the silence of clarity. A calm so deep it no longer needs to be heard, because it sees, and when you reach that place, you become unshakable. The storm still comes. The words still twist, the stories still shift, but you no longer chase them. You watch, you breathe, you stay. That is the dangerous calm of the awakened. The calm that doesn't react but observes, that doesn't fight but doesn't fold. The calm that holds the mirror without trembling. Emotional closure is not winning the argument. It's not making them admit. It's not proving your side, that it's knowing deep in your being that you didn't abandon yourself in the process, that because that's the real loss. Not when they lie, but when you silence. The part of you that knew it was a lie, that's so. Now in every interaction, carry this quiet compass, ask it gently. Is this person seeking truth or obedience? What would Marcus say if he stood silently beside me and watched what's unfolding? Am I shrinking or standing? Because silence is not the absence of words. It is the presence of self-doubt. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is sit calmly in front of a lie and not flinch. You don't owe anyone your peace, but you owe yourself your center dot. And when you protect it, not with anger, but with presence, you've already won.